Ladies and gentlemen, this is Garrett French with Citation Labs. I'm here in the global offices of Citation Labs, also known as my basement. This is my little office down here. Used to be the laundry room, but I kicked the washer and dryer out. That's the kind of pull I got at my house. Well, folks, I'm really excited. This is the first in a long series of webinars that I intend to do through all of 2019, barring barring lots of things, but that I'm hopeful to continue with. I've been looking for a kind of a quick and easy mechanism for doing webinars, and I think Hangouts is that. If it really bothers you, or you're a kind of a webinar purist and you think I should be doing something different, totally open to suggestions or recommendations. But anyhow, today I'm talking about building links to sales pages. All right, building links to landing pages, your target pages, the kinds of pages that you want to have ranking higher in Google. So this is an area we've been called to work on quite a bit by past and hopefully future clients. And it's an area that I think in the broader spectrum or broader picture of the market of link building agencies, it's a little bit less done these days. There was an era of link buying when it's pretty much all folks did was build links to sales pages. And then that kind of fell by the wayside, and lots of agencies now are doing fantastic types of work where they're creating unique pieces of content that are designed specifically for link building campaigns. And that's wonderful, right? And you need these kinds of links, and you should absolutely do this kind of link building. But there's also a place for building links directly to your sales pages. And that's, again, what we've been asked a problem we've been asked to solve numerous times. And it's something I love kind of thinking about and speaking to. So again, this is my first webinar, Hangouts on Air. So if you can find a way to contact me and ask me questions as we proceed, I'd love to hear from you. But I don't know, I don't have anybody fielding the question. So if I don't answer, you can always email me, Garrett, Garrett @citationlabs.com, and I'll follow up by email afterwards. Okay, so bear with me. It's going to be awesome. I promise, as awesome as I can make it. But also bear with me as I kind of figure out and fuddle about with clicking the right buttons here. So I'm looking right now for my share screen button. Play by play, folks. You're welcome. Let's see. This should share my screen. Let's share that. Ooh, you like that? Okay, let's see. So we're going to go over to, come on, Google. There we go. Now we're going to start this. See, I know you're glad you're here. Look at this. This is me living my best life right now. Thank you again for joining. This is exciting stuff for me. All right. I decided to hold it more of a lecture than a webinar, just because I'm going to be talking a lot, and I'd love to hear from you. But it's, and I have a sense that it could potentially get dry. Oops. And if so, you can always just go read the article. It's a lot faster to get through if you want. But so now I'm going to try to knock this out for you guys in about 3 minutes, so you can abandon ship if you need to. You can get the gist of the concept right now. And I'm going for a bullet point record here. I know that's not best practices. I've seen Rand Fishkin talk about how to give great talks. I don't. But anyways, here's what we've got. All right. So you're first and foremost, when you're building links to sales pages, and frankly, building any kind of links, but let's bring it back to the sales pages. You want to assess your publisher targets, and by that I mean you're really asking who is their audience and what audience needs are they trying to solve. Okay, so this is that's the kind of the fundamental place. So you really, you are looking for people who will link. You're looking for publishers who will link, but almost more importantly, you're asking, who is my audience? Where do they go online? What are they reading? What are their informational needs? Okay. Second, you're listing possible info assets you can add to your page. So the whole concept, guys, it really isn't complicated. You're just adding a linkable asset or some kind of detail to the sales page that would be justifiably linkable, a citable element, we call it. So that, I mean, that's, you can leave. That's the whole idea, is you're trying to find that one citable element that could potentially be scalable, or kind of have a campaign built around it, and that's it. And we call that the info asset for the page. And then you're looking to bridge the publisher's topics, like their audience needs, with your to your available assets. So this is where you know who your audience is, folks. You can name them, or you got, you're trying to find, like I'm trying to find in-house SEOs. I know who they are, but their needs is really where things get, where you can get creative, like understanding their precise needs that they have and how those are articulated into content that the publishers are publishing, and that you could potentially get into into the stream of, right? That's where you are doing the majority of your work. At least that's what we've found, where you have to do the majority of your work, is kind of trying to understand, how do you support audience needs in a constructive, useful way, with data that also happens to live on your sales page. Okay. So then once you've got your kind of, your publishers, the audience needs for those publishers, what information asset that you're going to be adding to your sales page, then you're looking at, well, what tactics should we be using? And very simply, you've got guest posting, you've got infographics, and then you've got, hey, knocking on doors. Hey, I noticed you had some outdated information. We've got a supplemented guide, or a supplemented data point, or the most recent data about X, Y, or Z, and it's on this page. So those are tactically all I could come up with. We've done a couple of them, but the last one we haven't done, frankly, I'll just tell you. But I think it could work. So you're you'll be flying a little blind on that one, but that's the hallmark of link building, is just trying something and see if it works, I think. So you're picking the best tactic, gathering contacts. Once you know your publishers, then you can, while you're adding those citable elements, you should be doing your prospecting and contact finding, and then you pitch and learn. And that's just, again, the key for any campaign is not just pitching and being done, but pitch a few and then see how they respond and see what kind of adjustments you might need to make. That was probably more than 3 minutes, but that's in a nutshell what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, I'm going to start to dig in on each one of these items and kind of expand. And this is the lecture part. Well, so was the previous part. And I probably should break occasionally to show my face, so you guys won't get super bored just looking at words and stuff. But anyhow, I might forget, I might remember. So number one, begin with your publisher targets. All right. You can also, well, there's a lot of places you could begin, but so starting with your publisher targets, you're asking yourself, what kinds of publishers will be advertising, because they're meeting the right kinds of audience that you're after. And then what you're doing is you're visiting with these sites, and you're looking at trying to extract from them what we call audience needs. What are the people who go to that site trying to achieve? What are the publishers trying to help their audience do? So really big, sort of existential almost questions, but these kinds of questions are what will lead you into kind of understanding what you need to have on your sales page, what specific detail or data element you need to add. So again, when you're making your assessment, you're also looking for how many distinct or unique publishers are there. This gives you a sense of actual volume of what we call volume of opportunity internally. You're looking also, frankly, for how do they support their publishing efforts. So we found this to be a major distinction. There's the kind of the editorial, not always, but often there's a sort of a higher editorial standard on sites that are ad supported or ad driven versus sites that are published in order to attract attention or done where they're publishing for content marketing purposes. So it's just a, to me, it's a key distinction. If you're trying to go into more ad supported publishers, you have to be more formal, or I would advise you be a bit more formal. Whereas if you're going for other kind of content marketing practitioners, you're more likely to have, you can be a little less formal, or you don't necessarily need to follow protocols of PR. Those things always scare me. So if you need more publishing targets, you could try our suggest-based prospecting method. I did an article about this. I'm going to be doing a webinar about it too, because I absolutely love prospecting this way. But this is just where you're kind of trying to crack into the most common inquiries that are made by your target audience in Google. So yes, this is keyword research essentially, which I normally don't do. I'm not an SEO, but it's where you're really trying to crack into what are the common problems and issues. Again, the informational needs of your target audience. And then you're looking for publishers who are writing about these things, right? Who are covering these topics, who are answering these kinds of queries that happen frequently in Google, or frequently enough for Google to auto-suggest it or auto-complete it. So lastly, again, if you're sort of new or you're looking for a new place to start, you're asking, where would your customers go to get their information needs met? Where would they go to be an audience? And then another way to ask that is, what websites would you pay for advertising on? Now, briefly, folks, I'm going to stop sharing screens. It's going to be really dark in here because I have to be able to look at my monitor, but I'm going to be looking to see if I have any questions. If I don't, it's okay. I'll be a little sad, but you don't have to ask me anything, just for my, my sense of importance. But if you have anything, please do ask it. You could ask it on Twitter. I guess I'll check Twitter and I'll look and see in the console, if there's in the Hangout console, if there's any kinds of questions there as well. Oh, there's a whole Q&A thing. I don't even have to stop sharing screens. Let your audience submit questions. I'm not sure what I'm allowing to have happen here. If I allow you guys to ask questions, but I'll just see what happens here. So the questions are supposedly on now, whatever that means. I don't know. And so hopefully you guys will be able to ask me questions. I will go check Twitter real quick. I'll stop sharing here briefly. Over to Twitter. Hey folks, I know it's dark. It's the only way I can see my screen. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. I see no questions right now on Twitter. And so I'll just check again probably in about 20 or 30 minutes. You can also ask questions in the shoot, now I don't know how to share my screen again. Hold on just a second. Thank you for bearing with me, guys. Again, first time doing this. There we go. Am I still sharing screen? There we go. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your patience and understanding. So we've gone through publisher targets. Of course, another way to think of them, what we often think of them internally at Citation Labs as our customers, right? Like the publishers themselves are customers. You're trying to figure out their needs, but really their needs are a subset of their audience needs, right? So it's, you've got to kind of have this layered understanding or layered appreciation of the publishers themselves. So now I want to talk a little bit about info assets, citable info assets. This is the magic part. This is the part you add. And the rest of the presentation is frankly a lot about methods and processes for generating these kinds of info assets. Because this is the part that often requires the most finagling or finesse. But it doesn't have to. You don't have to be, have a real elegant kind of approach here, but you certainly can, and there's ample justification for doing so frequently. But I should have said this at the very beginning, but like if you don't have control over the pages that you need to build links to, then this webinar won't be super useful if you can't really add anything to those pages. Now, another side note on that point, what you're adding will impact what that page ranks for or how Google perceives that page. So, and I'm not an SEO. I can't advise on how much, new content or new data is too much. And so you have to work with a strong SEO or an in-house SEO team or whoever, or your agency or whoever, to get a sense of how much can you really get away with adding. So as an exercise, what we like to do a lot is think about what we call the theater of action, or the theater of practice for customers. Now, this is to help us stop thinking of customers as customers and think of them in their own terms. As someone with ongoing goals and specific objectives for every work day of their life, and they're in the middle of their work, or if you're B2B or if you're B2C, they're still in the middle of something. They're in the middle of their lives, and you're interrupted. You're looking for, how do we get in front of that in a productive way? And very rarely have I seen sort of careful thinking about beyond stuff like, are they on a mobile device, or are they but the question is, where are they actually, what are they in the middle of right now? And I think we'll get more into that, but this kind of, it could be, literally, where are they? Are they sitting in their car on the side of the road? It could also be kind of, they're in the midst of the process of, moving, right? So where are they in that process, or what stage are they in? Because a lot of this impacts what information would be useful to them, or what data would be useful to them. An example, we worked with a company where we saw an opportunity. They knew when there was the most demand for local movers in any given city. They knew when there was the most demand, and they conversely knew when there was the least demand. And so we could turn that into a metric that we call the best time of the week to move, or the best time to move in the city name. And so, assuming that when there's the most opportunity or the most availability, that's when it's not, because it could be in the middle of rush hour, and that's obviously not a good time to move. But it's a way of kind of spinning some of their custom data that they had into a, for that person who's in the midst of selecting a mover, or in the midst of planning a move, they could see when the best time of the week to move was, which is often something that folks aren't thinking about, right? When you're moving is so much, one of the worst things. I absolutely despise it, but as a life thing, but as a life event, but it's one of those things that you don't really think too much about the dates beyond when you have to leave and when, et cetera. But when you can have control over it, there are better days than others. And we call this, in that particular instance, that was sort of a data byproduct. So this wasn't something that they were really, that they had published previously, but it was certainly a aspect that they had in their databases, and we could freely publish, that they had just really hadn't used before, or hadn't kind of found their way to publish, because there wasn't a context for it, or a kind of a user metric, or there's no user utility kind of extracted from that particular data point. And so that's what you're really looking for, is how do we create user utility, or audience utility out of some of our existing data points. That's in a perfect scenario. In a less perfect scenario, you could certainly add historical or inspirational information to your product or service page. You could add how-to information, as long as it's very related to to that individual product. These types of things are also citable. Okay, so again, you want to add information to the page that ideally isn't impacting sales or your sales funnels. I'm sure that's carefully crafted, and you've probably been studying and testing. You don't want to add any huge paragraph in the middle of your funnel, but you need to put it in a place where it's accessible to visitors to the page, and then also accessible to your potential linkers as well, and editors and publishers. Whew. Okay. Now, the really fun stuff. This is a slide from a presentation I did a while back. So I just love, I guess, I don't know, I didn't study philosophy, but I really like philosophy. And so I like breaking things down as far as I can into their smallest particles. So we're going to get a little bit molecular here. And again, thank you for watching. This is about link building, and we will get back into tactics. But right now, I'm still talking about discovering the kinds of information that will be highly useful, or as useful as we can engineer it, to your target audience, right? So again, this is Garrett land here, I call it, because it's not no, I haven't had any other fellow SEOs or link builders kind of be like, yeah, I think that model is accurate. So this is just purely Garrett. Anyhow, this is a slide from a deck I've been working on for a while, but just really what we're trying to do is break out the kinds of elements or factors or facets of the practitioner's day-to-day. And the practitioner is your customer, right? They're in some sort of practice where they're trying to achieve some sort of goal, and probably your products or services help them achieve that to some degree. So we're thinking about the things that limit practitioners in their day-to-day, and often their limiters are where their needs come from. Okay, so for example, time. I'm really busy. So I don't have time to work in my garden, or, and then money, of course, is another key limiter, or specific tools and materials, key objectives, your mindset, knowledge you have. All of these are factors in the practitioner that can limit their ability to achieve their specific goals. And so kind of running through these things, now there probably are more, folks. So this, again, pure Garrett land here, but running through these could help trick. You say, oh, if we're really thinking about our target market or our target audience, and we think about them in practice in their daily work, these are some of the aspects that are key details we can provide that would help them achieve some specific goal. And then the entity is what we call the object of practice, what they're working on. So there's the gardener, that's the practitioner, and then there's the garden, that's the entity. Now also the shovel that the gardener is using could potentially be an entity if they need to sharpen it, or whatever you do with shovels. So then we're looking at what are of the entity, of the garden, of the I think about parenting a lot also. So there's the practitioner is the parent, the entity is the child. So what are the actually governable traits of that entity? Traits of concern to the practitioner. So this is what they're going on to Google to search for, the problems they're having with that key entity that they're responsible for. And then also kind of condition of the entity, or the phase, or the age, or whatever of that specific entity. All these things are going to kind of probably be the reasons why practitioners are going to Google to search for help, or going to their publishers to search for help. And this is where their needs are coming from. This is where their needs are coming from. If you're still with me, I'm grateful and I'm really excited. I know we're getting into really kind of esoteric stuff, but when you boil it down like this is where, for me, where a lot of the ideas can come from for how do we create something highly useful, highly citable, that can live on a sales page. And yes, of course, it could also not live on a sales page. You could just make a great article. So, there's that too. So you're walking away with that too. And then the piece that I think is really interesting is the theater of practice of where are they actually working. I love, well, I don't love, but just as an example, I'm a father of 3. I'm a pretty active dad. So I've not afraid of changing a diaper at all. If I were to write an article about how to change a diaper, I could give a step-by-step, here's how to do it. But you change the theater of practice where I'm actually changing that diaper, and you go to the back of the car for a roadside blowout. Well, that's a different theater of practice, different circumstances involved, and I'm going to have different advice, right? So for the theater of practice, we're talking about circumstance, unexpected or even expected circumstances. We're talking about the environment in which the practitioner is operating or working, where you're, again, I like the roadside example of, hey, I've got a blowout on the side of the road. So the article you need then, you're sorry, I'm confusing myself. But so anyhow, theater of practice, where is your audience doing their most commonly doing their work, or the tasks that relate to their entity or whatever they're doing, and really the reason why you think about that is to kind of help visualize. And this might just be something that helps me. This might not help anybody else, but it's to help visualize what kinds of information would be useful in those moments. I'm not going to tell you what information is useful for field changing, a poopy blowout. I'll save that for another discussion. But that's the level that I think you should be getting to when you're really doing your best to think as clearly as possible about your audience. They are practitioners trying to get a job done. You're there to assist them. Your data or whatever you're adding to your sales page needs to assist them. And certainly what you're selling, your product or service, should be assisting them as well. And so the detail or data that you're adding to that page should be, in line, obviously, with what that product or service does, but then also assist in some level in one of these kinds of layers of what makes information actually useful to that practitioner. Whew, that was a mouthful. Thank you, guys. Okay, so another way to think about it, and again, I'm going to be really dwelling on this because this is the area where I feel like there's the most kind of opportunity for most link builders or content marketers to think about what information can we have that would make our page super useful, make our sales page super useful. So we're looking at, this, now we're getting into the section on, when, where, how, and why. Info asset generation. And so the when, where, how, and why is really where is that practitioner working? And then when, where, why, and how is this product or service used for preferred outcomes? When people are using whatever your product or service is, how are they using it? When, why, where? All of these elements or layers, if you think them through, could be doorways into a campaign, right? So I need to give an example. I didn't prepare any. This is Garrett. This is classic me. So a really good example, let's see. Well, I mean, fishing lures. I think I don't fish. That's probably a bad example to start with. This might get convoluted, but let's just say diaper wipes, right? So if there were a, on the actual sales page for the diaper wipes, if we had a section on there about, extreme case for, the roadside blowout, suggestions for that, First of all, it's a chance to upsell some products. Like if you have, I don't know, Clorox bleach for sale also, that might be useful to have a little bit in your car. But or not, that doesn't matter the brand, but just some kind of bleach. Um, so again, what I'm getting at is how and where and when and why is your product or service being used. Put yourself in those places. Imagine yourself in those moments. Maybe even better, ask your customers for stories. But this is where that level of detail can come from. That could potentially open up a gateway for publishers, because you're either finding some new need, or you're finding some new solution, or some new kind of moment where your product or service is super helpful, and then you're able to articulate that ideally in a way that gets you a link back to that sales page. So stuff like well, obviously details about their day-to-day work life, like when they're or the day-to-day life as it relates to your product or service, like that. The more detail you can get there, the better. And then certainly best times for best places for the practice or for using this product or service, how-to advice for best outcomes. We had carpet install recently, and at the very end, before they came, they gave us a big sheet of what to expect before they came and how we needed to prepare our home. That's something that would be incredibly linkable. So just a checklist for how to be ready or prepare yourself for the product or service, I think would be is another kind of highly useful and certainly highly relevant bit of information to add to a page. More stuff, because you want to run through everything, and I'm being exhaustive here for a reason, and that's because you never know what's going to trigger an idea. So these are kinds of things we run through when we're thinking about what do we need to add to a particular sales page to make that linkable. And we are coming up on the actual tactics. So that is coming up that you'll be using to kind of promote this or contextualize or house this data offsite. But we'll get to that. So, anything you can get from the seller themselves. So product related stuff, observations about the manufacturer, sales numbers, if any of this could be available to you or could be publishable and isn't currently, what you're looking for is, what does this mean to the practitioner? Any kind of data you can get is great, but just the numbers may not necessarily be citable or linkable or relevant. But you asking, how do we make this relevant? Can we line it up with another number so that now we can tell people, for example, the best time of the week to move in any given city? So your review section, if it's products, could be interesting potentially, especially if you've got kind of practical advice in there. Again, the task list, checklist, what the first things to do when your product arrives, your service is about to start. Like a lot of just really being super practical, I think, is where you want to lean and push. Extreme tests of your product or service. I remember a page on a website from Ross Hudgens. I don't recall the name of the site, but I do recall that the page drove people to buy basketballs over on Amazon. But he had this incredible study that he did on that page where they actually ran water on different outdoor basketballs, just hosed them down, and I guess tracked or kind of measured which ones shed water the most quickly. And I think they called those the ones that were the best for outdoor basketball. Now, I'm probably butchering it, but that I'll look for a way to share that at some point if it's still available. But it immediately comes to mind because it was just lovely. It was this kind of extreme test. They had tons of pictures, and so that is an extreme to go to for a sales page, but it's effective. Then to a degree is linkable. Now I don't know. I mean, I guess there are a lot of ways you could talk about best outdoor basketballs or, testing outdoor basketballs. There could be quite a few publishers where that could potentially work. If you're talking about, getting your children more active outside or, things like that. So anyhow, another kind of, I think, stellar example. So all right, guys, thanks for sticking around. This is the part that I'm guessing most people were hoping for, and no, I don't think epiphanic moments here, but just these are the tactics that I think best support the kind of data dissemination that you can enable when you add that data to your pages. First and foremost, just plain old guest placements, right? So where you're actively discussing or talking about some aspect of your product, not that you have a product for sale, nobody cares. They do, and that's great. But some kind of where you're going onto someone else's site, you're helping audience problems, you're filling audience needs, and you're able to cite your own data or your own study or your own findings about, outdoor basketballs or the best time of the week to move, and you're able to point directly to your sales page from that citation, right? Number two, mini infographics. Now, I say mini just because if we ever do an infographic, it's going to be small because we don't do the home run or the grand slam kind of work like a Neomam does, where it's targeting kind of what we call the 1% of publishers. We're really looking at the other 99%, so we need more scalable stuff. So for me, that infographic would just be more of a guide or a small like detail or kind of how-to around a very specific aspect of assistance or assisting that practitioner. And again, you would be, one of your cited elements there would be the data or the how-to or the inspiration or the information that you've added to your sales page. And then I mentioned this at the very beginning, but that where you're reaching out to publishers who have outdated information or old information or incomplete in some way by your assessment, and you're kindly asking them to share a little bit more information about outdoor basketballs, best time of the week to move, how to change a poopy blowout on the side of the road. That's where you'd be kind of knocking on doors. It's more of that. I forget what those techniques are. I think is it the skyscraper from Brian Dean? I don't recall exactly, but you're just kind of augmenting existing pages and just hoping that people are like, oh yeah, that's great. We really do need something on this page about outdoor basketballs. Then the last one, and this is, I got a question mark beside it because this is not mine, where I work, but that there might be a case where you could actually design a campaign for that 1%, that top level publisher. I have no idea what you'd be putting on that page, and I think that they'd be highly resistant to citing or mentioning information that happens to be on a sales page. But you never know. I threw it in there because I don't know what I'm talking about on this, so it's easy for me to say, sure, that might work. So those are the key tactics that I would do for these elements, and frankly, the one that we've had the most success with is the first one, where you're finding opportunities to mention some key data point while you're executing a guest placement. So lastly, pitch and learn. This slide could go on any link building presentation or PR presentation or any any marketing presentation probably, but pitch, see how people respond, and then adjust. And one note I would make is adjust the smallest possible element, so that you're relatively sure that if things change, that's why. It's not always possible to do that. That's just an ideal. But okay, I'm going to summarize, folks, and doing pretty good on time. I thought I would be talking more, but so you're starting with your publisher's audience, identifying their needs, and you're looking for data or information that you can put on your sales page that bridges their needs and your sales page, right? So you already know this kind of stuff. I mean, this is like the benefits, right? The benefits of the product or service, but really we're having to go, try to not be markety here and look at more of a utility or how to, or some kind of pro tip that you can layer in there, that gets at the benefits, but really speaks more to the practical side of using this particular product or service. Like, practically speaking, what does the practitioner, the person who you're trying to get to, you're trying to interrupt their day, or you're trying to intersect with them right when they're doing that search for how do I change a tire on the side of the road, or what's the best outdoor basketball or what have you, and you're intersecting with that moment, and by thinking through in a very full way about your audience, and really thinking of them as practitioners who have specific tasks they're trying to achieve all day long. That's what they do, is achieve tasks. And you're looking at, how do I support these tasks wherever they may be, whatever time of day it may be. That's where these kinds of rich ideas for citable elements, for me, that's where they come from. That's why I've really belabored this aspect. And it's not, how much of link building have I really talked about here? Not a ton, folks. I mean, frankly, this is primarily content ideation, but it supports and facilitates, it can support and facilitate a campaign. And then, you're looking for a narrative or a campaign around using the facets, and, well, I'm just going to read this because it says a nice little turn of phrase here: compelling facets and implications of the data that you've kind of positioned on your sales page for helping that practitioner do their job better or more effectively achieve their objectives. Again, lastly, pitch in small batches, observe response, and adjust. That's, I think everybody says that from an outreach perspective, but it's true. You don't want to. You can frequently, we find that if we go too far too fast, we're getting off on the wrong foot. So I love thinking about these things. I love starting with the landing page or the sales page and learning about the practitioner or the audience or the customer. But I think it's helpful to think of them as a practitioner, or reframe them as a practitioner, because you get a little more, I think, earnest in your work to serve them or be useful to them. And that's where I feel like you can, if you just think of them as a customer, you're thinking of their money first, right? If they're a practitioner first, you're thinking of their, kind of assisting or aiding them. At least I do. I mean, that's just me. But anyhow, I'd love to hear from you. If you've got a super tricky sales page, I could do another webinar that would probably be a lot more useful to folks, just on like running through, hey, here's the sales page. Here's how I would approach coming up with data or stuff to add to this page. I need to see your sales pages, though. You got to be willing to have it talked about on, publicly. but alternately, you can also send me an email, say, hey, don't share this, and I'll be happy to check out what you've got. But yeah, I'm gonna do, and I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get stumped. That's when actually things get interesting and fun. Is when I don't know what to do, because then I've got to figure it out, and that's what we've kind of built the Citation Labs agency around the past 7-8 years now. Okay, thank you guys. Again, I'm gonna quick check in here. We've got some. Oh man, looks like people weren't able to get in. Dawn asked, were we recording? Hey, I don't see anything in Twitter, and I'm gonna check here. And I hope that there was a recording. I'm not even sure I'm recording right now. Oh yeah, I am. I have 16 viewers. You guys, what are you doing here? Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Let's see, hold on. Let me see if I can see any questions and answers here. Oh, there's a chat. So I'm here. I'll just hang out for another couple minutes. If you've got questions, I'll just kind of try to decompress a little bit here. I hope there's going to be a recording of this and to share. And I'll be hoping to get some inquiries from folks, or to be. I say stumped. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a personal challenge or anything. Don't go digging for something that you think is going to be the hardest sales page ever. But if you've got something you'd like to talk through, I'd enjoy it. And I usually, on most of my sales calls, I'm pretty much coming up with the approach on the call. So you can take the approach. You don't have to necessarily hire us, though I prefer you do, but you don't have to. I am going to go ahead and wrap now, folks, and thank everyone who stayed till the end. It was a great pleasure, a great honor to be able to speak. And honestly, it's so fun when I can talk about the practitioner and the info utility and stuff like that. It's something that I think about a lot and don't really get to talk about very much. And it's not something that I usually bring up around family dinners and things like that. It's just not super accessible. So it was a lot of fun. Thank you guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this now. Appreciate all the folks who stuck around to the end. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of the day.